everyone! Today I'm coming at you guys with a review slash kind of book talk, and that is the first book in one of my favorite series of all time, City of Bones by Cassandra Clare. Actually, this is the first day of the winter biannual bibliothon, and technically I should be reading right now. The reason why I am reviewing these books is actually twofold. I am joining in Emma Books' read-along for the entire year. For those of you who don't know, Emma Books is an amazing booktuber who's hosting a year-long read-along for all of the Shadowhunter Chronicles books in the year of 2018, trying to get all of the books done by December. If one of you guys hasn't read the book yet, this is a great opportunity to get started. If it's a book series that you've been meaning to read for ages and haven't yet got to, Emma's doing it at a very steady pace. It's about one book a month. It's really doable. Even if you're not much of a reader, getting one book done a month isn't really hard, including Queen of Air and Darkness, which is the last book in the Lady Midnight series, and also chronologically I think wraps up the entire Shadowhunters Chronicles. I don't know about you guys, but for any of you who have read all the Shadowhunter Chronicles books, it is a very emotional thing. While I'm both extremely excited for Queen of Air and Darkness, I'm also quite emotional about it. I don't want this roller coaster to end. However, we still have a couple of Shadowhunter books that are going to come out after Queen of Air and Darkness, and I'm really excited for those. The second reason is that The Mortal Instruments is one of my favorite series of all time, and I've been meaning to film videos on all of the books a while ago. That never really worked out, and I thought it would be a great opportunity while I'm doing this read-along to also post my thoughts on the books, tell you guys some of my favorite scenes from the books, have some discussion questions open so that we can all talk about it. I can probably happily assume that most of my watchers have already read the Mortal Instruments series, but for those of you who haven't read any of the Mortal Instrument books, let me give you guys a quick synopsis. The Mortal Instruments centers around a girl called Clary Frey. She is 15 years old. She lives in New York with her mom. Her best friend Simon and her are basically just ordinary teenagers. They both go to the same school. She's really into art. Until one day they go to this club called Pandemonium and she witnesses three people all dressed in black with a knife about to kill someone. She follows them and she finds out that those three kids are actually Shadowhunters who are half angel and half human. They are called the Nephilim or Shadowhunters. They dedicate their entire lives to killing demons. They draw runes upon their bodies which give them special powers and abilities. And basically her mom disappears. There's an attack on her house and she basically finds herself stranded, not really knowing what to do, and she kind of just gets put into this magical world that she's never heard of before and makes some really crazy discoveries about herself, her heritage, her mom, secrets that she never even knew about. If you guys haven't read any of the books, I would highly recommend you guys to go and do so. They are popular for a reason. They are well liked for a reason. I do not think that The Mortal Instruments is an overhyped book series. It is genuinely a really good book series, and I do not think that any of you guys will be disappointed if you go out and read them. Before I get into a spoiler section, I will quickly, for those of you who haven't read the books yet, break the book down into a couple of reasons why I think you guys should read the books and why I think this book series is just truly phenomenal. So the first reason I think is the characters. The characters are so well written, they are so deep, there are so many of them, but Cassandra Clare, even though she has so many characters and writes about so many different plot points, she really truly manages to make each person unique with their backstory, their strengths and weaknesses, things about them that make them who they are. I think that she does a really great job at it. And even though The City of Bones is not the best written book of the entire series, you can definitely tell that Cassie's writing gets better and better with each subsequent book. I still think that her writing is really gripping and is really great, and she finds great ways to describe things that are going on. I also think that while the magical world is just really complex, there's so many aspects to it. You know, you have the Nephilim, you have humans, you have the fairies, you have the warlocks, you have vampires, you have werewolves. That branches out even further if you look into like the further intricacies of all of the races. I still feel like everything is completely coherent. Sometimes when I'm reading a book series, some of the magic elements might be a bit jumbled up. Some things just get too complex and you kind of lose sight of what the magical world really is about, and I feel like in Cassie's books that really does not happen. Each and every magical element really has a purpose in her books, is really well connected with the rest of the story. The world just seems so well established. There's also a great structure to it. It really feels real when you're reading it. Obviously, while fantasy isn't actually real, you can totally imagine it actually being real and it actually happening. And I just think that that is something that makes great books great, is when you can actually imagine that happening and there aren't really that many plot holes or, you know, just generally holes in the magic system or the magic world. So that is something that I just really appreciate about these books. And I think that for people who haven't read these books either, I think this is also something that they will appreciate. I also think that the character development in this series is really well done. You can really see each and every character going through their own struggles, going through their own ups and downs, and and eventually, you know, coming out different at the end. Like I said before, there are so many characters in the Shadowhunter universe. Cassie really writes them in a way that you really know where each and every one of them is at. You know their struggles, you know their problems, you know what they're dealing with. And I feel like that really shows just like in the dynamics of the group relationship. You can tell, you know, from the dialogue, from the way people are acting, what they're personally struggling with. In the books further on, when there are multiple points of views, I feel like that becomes even more intricate and even more well shown in the books, so that is also an aspect that I really appreciate. If you are starting the series for the first time, I would also highly recommend you guys pick up the Shadowhunter Codex. I didn't have this book when I first started reading the series, but in retrospect, I realized that it would have been a really handy thing for me to have while I was reading the series for the first time. You don't need this when reading the series. It isn't that you won't understand things, it isn't that the stuff in the books isn't well explained, but just if you want more background, if you want to know just like a bit more about each race, maybe just delve more into the Shadowhunter world, this is a great companion read-along book. I wouldn't recommend you guys sit down and read this from cover to cover just because it is quite hefty and textbook-like, and if you're a big Shadowhunters fan and you've already read the books, I definitely recommend you guys get this. It's just a great way to piece together more information from the whole series and to just gain a bit more knowledge about this world that you're reading about or the world that you already know and love, and it just fills a lot of holes. It is obviously also really satisfying when you're reading about a magical world that's greatly written and super coherent, and then just having a little more information to each of the aspects. So I would highly recommend each and every one of you guys who has not yet picked up the Shadowhunter Codex to go and do so. I think that was it for my non-spoiler section. I hope that I might have convinced some of you guys to go and pick up the series. You will definitely not regret it. I think that me and a lot of other people can attest to the fact that this series is just so well written, is so well constructed, is so magical and delicate and absolutely beautiful. So without further ado, let's get into the spoiler section and talk about specific things of this book that I really liked. First things first, one of the things that I absolutely love about City of Bones is the banter between Jace and Clary. I know this gets touched up on a lot, but it's just something that has to be repeated. In my opinion, it's something that really should be stressed. Obviously, the first time I read City of Bones, I absolutely loved the humor in it. I thought it was completely funny, but it wasn't actually until I went away and read a couple of other YA books that I really began to appreciate the humor that Cassie has in this series. There are so many lines that are so well constructed. It seems like Cassie spends hours and hours thinking up these witty, funny lines that absolutely fit really well into the dialogue, but when you're actually reading it, it seems totally natural. As an example of what I mean, I'll read you guys a couple of quotes that I picked out that really illustrate this really well and are also one of my favorite quotes of this book. He stood up. "One of the Silent Brothers is here to see you. Hodge sent me to wake you up. Actually, he offered to wake you up himself, but since it's 5 a.m., I figured you'd be less cranky if you had something nice to look at." "Meaning you? What else?" Jace nodded. "And that's the motto of the Nephilim, the Shadowhunters. There on the base." "What does it mean?" Jace's grin was a white flash in the darkness. "It means Shadowhunters. Looking better in black than the widows of our enemies since 1234. It's not grey," Clary felt compelled to point out. "It's green. If there was such a thing as terminal literalism, you'd have died in childhood," said Jace, brushing dust off the windowsill. He squinted at her. "Do you remember back at the hotel when you promised that if we lived, you'd get dressed up in a nurse's outfit and give me a sponge bath?" "Actually, I think you misheard," Clary said. "It was Simon who promised you the sponge bath." Jace looked involuntarily over at Simon, who smiled at him widely. "As soon as I'm back on my feet, handsome." And I'm sure that you guys who've read City of Bones can agree with me that those quotes are just truly funny. They really highlight just how sarcastic and witty Jace is. On the other hand, while I totally appreciate his humor and his comedy and his comedic aspect, you can also see that the reason why Jace is just so funny is that he's sort of trying to hide this vulnerable side of him, and that is just something that you also see at the end of this book when he finally meets with Valentine. You can really see that there is this fragile side about him that is about to crack. Obviously, I don't want to spoil anything for those of you guys who haven't read City of Ashes yet, but it's something that gets stressed upon in the second book, but I really feel like Cassie does such a great job illustrating this brokenness already in the first book, but obviously Jace's humor is just really funny in general, so we can all appreciate that, and thankfully it never goes away. Now again, I would really like to just highlight the fact that Cassie's writing really has improved over her books. You can really tell that this first book is not her best written work, but I have to say though, I feel like this doesn't get touched up enough. There are so many people who stress the fact that her writing gets so much better as her series progresses, and I totally agree. You can really tell that it matures, you can tell that it gets more sophisticated, you could tell that it becomes more intricate. Her writing and her dialogue is more polished. But I would really just like to touch up on the fact that while City of Bones might be her least sophisticated work, it is still one of the best written YA books I've read personally. It is well written, there are great analogies and metaphors, and her writing style just really sucks one in. You can really just get lost in this world, the way she describes it, the way that she does the dialogue, especially with all the humor that she puts into her books. I really appreciate that, and I do not think that this can be stressed enough in my opinion, because again, like I said, I think that people focus a lot on her improvement, but I just want to take some time and just really focus on how great her writing is in City of Bones. Simon, he is just so adorable. I think that Simon is definitely one of my favorite characters of the series. He's also incredibly funny. Probably some of you guys, if not most of you guys, are watching the show Shadowhunters. Alberto does an amazing job at portraying Simon. I do not think that he falls short of anything that Simon represents. There are just like certain scenes from the book, like for example the scene where, you know, Simon gets turned into a rat and goes to the Hotel de Mort, that I just personally feel is really missing from either the movie or the TV series. I know that in the movie they actually did go to the Hotel de Mort and it wasn't like some weird just penthouse thing like in the series, but this just like aspect of him turning into a rat and Clary having to like sort of take care of him, and he's like squeaking and she has to hide him and he's sort of like just scuffling around, I think is a really funny aspect to the series. I think it is a great chapter as well, and personally I just feel like that's missing in the movie and the TV series, and I would have really liked to see that. I know this isn't a movie slash TV series discussion, but I really just wanted to put that out there. Another thing I'd really like to touch up on is that you can really tell that Izzy cares about, you know, Simon and Clary and the others in this book. I feel like way too often she is portrayed as someone who's very kind of cold or nonchalant, and I feel like if you really take the time, pay attention to what Izzy says and what she does, you can tell that she really cares about, you know, Simon and Clary. I think that that is just really sweet. You can also definitely tell that there is this vulnerable side to her, which is also a very important aspect for the later books, but I really appreciate that. And obviously, while it would have been nice if Izzy and Clary would have been able to get along from the beginning, it is also really nice to see her opening up her heart for Clary and making room for another girl to be friends with. You know, that scene at the end where she and Clary talk it out and Izzy says that she would really like to be friends with Clary is something that really warms my heart each and every time I read it. While the TV show does a great job at also showing Izzy's happy character and stuff, I feel like this progression from her being a bit more distant to her opening up and wanting to be friends with Clary is something important. That is part of her character development and her maturity, and I would have really liked to see more of that in the TV show. I think a lot of people sometimes criticize Cassie for, you know, making Izzy a bit more cold at the beginning, but again, like I said, I feel like that's just part of her growth and her evolution as a character, and I feel like that is also really important to stress. I feel like City of Bones does a great job at teaching us about friend zoning. I feel like way too often in this world, there are people who feel like people, mostly girls, are obligated to date, you know, their best guy friends. While I do feel like Clary was just a bit too oblivious about Simon's feelings for her in the book, I feel like it really gives a great point of view about friend zoning. There are so many guys who feel as though girls who friend zone guys are being on purposely cruel, or that, you know, like they deserve to have a date with this girl. If a guy was truly her best friend, she would actually date him. And I feel like City of Bones really gives some clarity about the truth of friend zoning. Clary was not being purposely mean when she didn't explicitly respond to his feelings for her. She wasn't being mean, she just genuinely didn't feel about him that way at that time. People should date who they want to date. No one is supposed to be obligated to date anyone, even if they have been friends with someone for a really long time, or if this person has invested a lot of time in this friendship. And I feel like Clary and Simon's relationship really kind of shed some light into this, that there is not really such a thing as friend zoning. When you become friends with someone, you are there to be friends with them. There is no extra purpose of dating them or wanting to, you know, like get in their pants or something. Obviously, the fact that Simon developed feelings for Clary is not in any way bad or should be hated on either. I think that Simon and his feelings for Clary are really cute. And obviously at that moment, you do really want Clary to have feelings for him as well. But it's just great that having this point of view from Clary's perspective sheds some light onto the reality of friend zoning, the thoughts that might go through a girl or guy's head when they do that. Friend zoning is so stigmatized in our culture. I've seen some really cruel things about it on, you know, the internet. It's just this expectation that people have. And I feel like Cassie does a really good job at representing this the proper way, and I really appreciate that. Now, I have a couple of discussion questions that I've prepared. This time around when I was reading City of Bones this month, I put a lot of effort into just thinking about the things that happened in this book. A couple of questions arose from me thinking about these things through a bit more. I don't have answers to these questions. I'm just going to sort of leave them as open questions. They aren't specifically super plot related or anything like that. I don't think they're super important, but if any of you guys have any answers to these questions or there are things that you guys have also wondered, it would be really cool if you guys could leave a comment down below telling me about your opinions about these questions. So my first question would be, why did the demon not recognize Izzy at the club? I know that there has already been a bit of speculation about this question. Some people think that it's like a glamour. Some people think that demons are just a bit stupid and they can't really tell the difference between a human and a shadow hunter. In the first couple of pages, it seems pretty clear that Isabel is seen as a human through this demon's perspective, but I really wondered how she manages to sort of evade his sort of like censor, why he didn't notice that she was a shadow hunter any sooner. Surely demons would, you know, be on the lookout for shadow hunters like most of the time. My second thing is like an observation. I feel like there are a lot of telltale signs from the beginning of this book, you know, that Luke has feelings for Jocelyn. At the very beginning of this book, when she is still at the apartment with Luke and her mom, Clary says that Luke doesn't like to be referred to as uncle, so he doesn't like it when Clary calls him her uncle. The more that I was thinking about this, I realized that probably the reason why he doesn't like to be called her uncle is because that would obviously imply that he's kind of like Jocelyn's brother, and because he has feelings for her, it wouldn't be something that he would like. You know, he wants to obviously pursue an actual romantic relationship with her, and so that is just something that I've noticed. Another question that I have is, how can Madame Dorothea do magic? From her story, it seems obvious that she was almost like adopted by a warlock mother who then supposedly taught her some tricks as to how to do, you know, magic predictions. I wonder how that really works. I'm just like a tiny bit confused. I thought that magic was something that was only really limited to warlocks or like the fae or vampires or whatever. I didn't realize that this was something that you could be taught. The last thing that I want to talk about is something a bit weird, but it is that specific scene where Clary confronts Alec about his feelings for Jace, and when he gets angry at her, he pushes her against the wall and he says, "If you ever tell Jace, I will kill you. By the angel, I swear it, I will kill you." And what really got me thinking was that previously in the book, when Jace and Clary are at the Hotel de Mort, they talk about swearing oaths, you know, and that when Shadowhunters swear oaths, they have to swear on the angel. And obviously, while this is something that isn't like super important to the series, I was wondering whether Alex swearing that actually bound him to an oath, because he said, "By the angel, I swear it, I will kill you." Does that then mean that like he technically swore an oath to kill Clary if she ever told Jace that Alec was gay? Is this something that was actually an oath? Is this something that has any relevance, or was it more just kind of like a figure of speech? I thought that when Shadowhunters said, "I swear it by the angel," it was something that was binding for the rest of their life. It was just something that passed my mind. I wonder whether you guys picked up on this as well. It would be really interesting to hear some people's thoughts. Alright, so those are the questions that I had while reading the book. I'm going to go through some of my other favorite quotes. The first one being when, you know, Simon enters the apartment and it says, "The door flew open. Jocelyn gave a little scream. 'Jesus!' Luke exclaimed. 'Actually, it's just me,' said Simon, although I've been told the resemblance is startling." Classic Simon. "Don't order any of the fairy food," said Jace, looking at her over the top of his menu. "It tends to make humans a little crazy. One minute you're munching a fairy plum, the next minute you're running naked down Madison Avenue with antlers on your head. Not," he added hastily, "that this has ever happened to me." "Hello is girly," he informed her. "Real men are terse, laconic. So the more manly you are, the less you say?" "Right," Simon nodded. "That's why when major badasses greet each other in movies, they don't say anything, they just nod. The nod means, I am a badass, and I recognize that you too are a badass. But they don't say anything because they're Wolverine and Magneto, and it would mess up their vibe to explain." Clary looked at the cup in her hand. It was the size, perhaps, of an ordinary wine glass, only much heavier. Power thrummed through it, like blood through living veins. "It's a perfectly nice size," she said indignantly. "Oh, it's big enough," he said patronizingly. "But somehow I was expecting something, you know." He gestured with his hands, indicating something roughly the size of a house cat. "It's the mortal cup, Jace, not the mortal toilet bowl," said Isabel. So those were some of my favorite quotes that I picked out from this book. Let me know whether you guys have any favorite quotes from this book and leave them down in the comments below. I would love to see what quotes you guys picked out. I think that was it for my book talk. Let me know whether you guys are joining in the read along as well this year. I will be getting to City of Ashes soon when I finish the Winter Biannual Bibliothon. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you would like more videos like this, please subscribe. I will be bringing out videos every week. Stay tuned for more Mortal Instruments videos / Shadowhunter Chronicle videos, and I will see you guys very soon with another video. Bye!
You're too slow!